this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppelliser.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good? I'm doing good. Again, even though the show's a little bit staggered, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, wishing you the best, Happy New Year. Like I said in my last episode, I can't believe we're going into 2023. It's like, what? It's like, what happened? 2001, Y2K, well, 2000 really, actually. And here we are, 20-something years in the future, 23 years, going into 23 years. And yep. It's kind of crazy. You know what? I see a lot of people shopping, which is good. But it's a different atmosphere. But I will tell you this. I see, at least in my neighborhood, I've seen more people putting up Christmas decorations, like outside, like the lights and, those inflatables, like last couple of years, people were there, but more or less everything was kind of on the dark side. But now it's like everybody's making up for lost time, and there's a bunch of, myself included, a bunch of houses that have gone, and you see that they've done the decorating, and some go, like the full Monty, like, okay, is there a house back there? But yeah, most everybody I've seen around my neighborhood, even though it's a rural area, they've put out some type of decoration out there. Okay. Which I think is everybody just trying to be happy. It's the holidays. Once upon a time, like when you were a kid and they said Christmas, it was like, and I laugh because when you were a child, that this once, it's a yearly thing. A year was a long time. So Christmas was a big deal. And now, of course, that thing about a year being a long time, like, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, not anymore. Like I said, here we are in 2023. I can't believe it. It felt like the other day I was trying to get myself to remember to write 2022. When you write date stuff, you keep trying to use the prior year, and it's like, no, now pretty soon you're going to just have to write 2023. So there goes that. But anyway, let's get on to the good stuff. The good stuff is who we have as a guest today at Stories of the Supernatural. Not one, but two. I've got two guests together. This is the first time that they've been here. And the gentleman, his name is Dr. Dave Bettenhausen, and he serves part-time as the Vice President of Medical Affairs at a small Midwestern hospital. And he retired after 25 years as a physician and 10 previous years as a cardiac surgical nurse. Carla Bogni-Kidd, which is the other person here that we're going to interview today. She's retired after 40 years of office managing for Dave and his predecessor. Dave and Carla have had a close relationship since 1998 when Dave purchased a medical practice where Carla was the office manager. Together, they have been on a spiritual journey since beginning meditation in 2014. They have written 4 books. The first, The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth, is the story of how they learned they have lived 29 past lives together. Their second book, Hell No, Reincarnation, is their reconciliation of their upbringing in Catholicism and other religions with what they now learned and believe about reincarnation. The manual explores just how God creates us and how that relates to our angels, spirit guides, astrology traits, and archetypes. Her Huba and His Rose is their 4th book, which takes place during the Second Temple period in Jerusalem. It is a love story, love of a couple, love of their families, love of a community, and love of the people for their God. This story is not about them, but their characters in that time. Dave and Carla have taught meditation at their local university as well as their senior center and services organizations. They train with Dr. and Mrs. Brian Weiss. Woo! Many lives, many masters. I love it. At the Omega Institute and Past Life Regression after writing their first 2 books to learn about regression therapy. Help me welcome them. How are you both doing today, Dave and Carla?
We're great. How are you?
Good.
Arlene, we're doing fantastic. Another great day in the Midwest.
Gloomy and raining.
Well, you know, we're about to go into a cold spell here in northern Florida. It's gonna drop them down into the 40s and 30s and stuff like that. And for us, you know, Floridians, it's like, I mean, it's like, wow, that's oh my God, that's so cold. That's like Arctic, you know. But
it's your turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be 17 degrees on Christmas, so don't.
Okay, all right.
Don't feel bad.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things by comparison. But yeah, it's one of the only thing I'm thankful for is because I grew up in Miami. I was born and raised in Miami, which is subtropical weather. So when I came up here and I've been here a couple of years, I was like, oh my God. Because down there, if it drops down to 50, you're like pulling out the sweaters. Oh, it's so cold. And it's like, all right. But yeah, the you get used to the thing with the snow and things like that. I think it's just a state of mind as far as living that way. Now, let me ask you, obviously from the bio, you both met. Carla, you were the office manager, at a practice, right?
Yes.
And Dave
I bought the practice.
And you bought the practice. Okay.
Correct.
How did you guys go from a professional setting, like, to going to reincarnation and meditation and all that other stuff?
Well, Marlene, it's a long enough story, but we have time. So
go right ahead.
So I bought the practice. Carla and I became great friends. She's one of the most supportive persons I have ever known. My best friend, without a doubt, for years. We started electronic medical records back in 2014.
Okay.
Or 2011, but 2014 was when we went live. And it was the worst experience of my entire medical practice. It was a horrible nightmare. If you were trying to see the same number of patients, you couldn't do it. I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes I didn't leave the office till 7, opening the computer, working on notes constantly, staring down at the computer all day while patients were there. It was a different way to practice medicine, and I hated it with a passion.
And he was a crab.
You know what? That was in pursuit of the paperless environment, which...
Oh, yes. And we're not 29. So to make that switch, I mean, we had computers, but to make everything, all charts and everything electronic, I got shingles. Yeah, I had shingles. And Dave who is normally a cross between Yogi Bear and Fred Flintstone. He was the biggest crab. You couldn't talk to him. And, you know, there just came a day when I said, Dave, we have to do something. Do you want me to call a counselor? No. So I was reading an AARP magazine about the benefits of meditation. So I brought it in and I thought, what the heck? I said, Dave, we have to do something. I'll call a counselor or we can try and meditate. Well, which one do you think he chose? He said meditation, of course.
Because no physician would admit any weakness.
Of course, right. It's like, it'll be our secret, you know.
Yes, nothing ever goes wrong with us. We're absolutely 100% healthy.
I can imagine.
Yes. So we decided we would meditate with the whole office. We had a small office and would do it before the patients began.
Okay.
So, you know, the first day we were all there and it's extremely hard to turn your brain off. And we're bombarded with all types of, telephones and computers and TVs and everything. So to sit there for 35 minutes afterwards, we all said, wow, that was really difficult. The second day, we all commented on seeing, bright colors. And the third day, the office girls said, well, we'll just do it at home. We don't want to come in early. So Dave and I said, we'll just do it ourselves and they can do it at home. So we did. And after about 35 minutes, we could hear the patients coming in. So we got up, went to our adjoining offices, and Dave came up behind me and he said, Carla, I know you'll think I'm strange, but I think I was just talking to your mother. Well,
oh my God.
Yeah, my mother, who died 18 years before that he never met.
Okay.
So I thought, first of all, why is she coming to you? I was meditating too. And then I thought, well, I've always been rather open-minded, even belonging to different churches. If they told me just to believe, I didn't go for that. So I thought, okay, it's a possibility. Well, my sister happened to be working in the office at the same time. She went in the back, she got her wallet, she brought up a picture of my mother, and she showed it to Dave. And Dave got
he had never even seen her.
No, he didn't know anything about my mother, except what she died from.
And
okay,
the other part of the story is I told Carla, the reason I think it's your mother is she was so jovial. She reminds me of you, kind of with that side view. I could see the same eyelashes. And I said, the strangest thing, she kept showing me a shoe.
And of course, I went to the computer and I Googled ballroom dancing shoes. And I said, which one? There were like 60 or 70 pair on the screen. And he picked out the exact ballroom dancing shoe that my mother wore her entire life. It was a short pump, open-toed sandal. She wore it for church, she wore it for dress up, and she wore it for ballroom dancing. So that was our first aha moment. And then when my sister showed him the picture, he got very emotional. And we said, what's the matter? And he said, it was very spiritual, but that's who I was speaking with.
But okay, so let me ask you, did this happen while you were meditating?
This was, yes.
Okay, so did you see her or did you see her in your mind? Zara?
I saw her really in my mind.
But let me ask you, so what was it? This lady with a shoe? What was it? Did she talk to you or was she just showing you something?
She was happy. She was showing me the shoe. She was like jovial energy. But I don't know why I knew it was Carla's mother. I just knew it.
And that's why I was going to ask you, what led you to, that first thing? Like, I'm sure you have patients and people that you were thinking, is this one of my patients that I don't remember that's showing me a ball? Yeah.
Yes.
No, we call that knowing. Sometimes you just know. You just know.
And so, of course, nobody wanted to go see patients, but they're all coming in. So I'm and I all day am thinking, I'm raised Catholic. This is impossible. I've lost my mind. Something is wrong with me. Carla's going to have to find me a real counselor. Carla keeps coming back and saying, when can we meditate again and see if we can talk to mom? And I'm like,
okay,
I've lost my mind, but I can't let any patients know because I'm a doctor and I have to be perfect.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I'm going up and down the hall, doing normal things, already mad at the computer because though meditation calmed me down so much that we actually did a bunch of research on meditation. We taught meditation for a while.
Okay.
We saw some tangible benefits, including at that time I had ballooned to such an incredibly high weight.
Okay.
That over the next year I meditated every day.
Okay.
And lost 2 pounds a week for 52 weeks in a row and dropped 104 pounds.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
It makes you your better self. It makes
so let me ask you something, and I'm gonna ask you real quick with the meditation, what did the meditation lower your anxiety, and maybe you thought you were eating as far as a distraction for your anxiety? Is that how it worked for you?
I believe, because the research that we did on it was we found that, of course, meditation, because it reduces anxiety and stress, drops your cortisol level.
Okay.
Stress hormone, which makes you hungry.
Which drives all that behavior whatever. Exactly. Yeah. That is so interesting. Now, Carla, let me ask you, prior to this, had you ever had any communication from your mom before?
Actually, I had been to a couple of mediums in the past. And I've always been into astrology. My family and my friends always thought I was kooky, but whatever. But one time I had gone to a medium after my mother passed, and she did come through and she was talking to me. So, I believed it could happen. So I believe Dave. There was no reason, and knowing Dave for 20 years, there was no reason to not believe what he was telling me. And then as we continued to meditate, Dave and all of us were getting like faces and places and objects, and we just continued to write everything down, hoping something that would make some sense. And just a couple of days into it, Dave met his spirit guide. She came to him and said, "I've been with you for over 6,000 years. My name is Isabella. I've been with you through your 42 lives." And we found that I had 34 lives, and 29 were together in all capacities, not as a love interest. I've been his mother. I've been his sister, his neighbor, all of the above.
And so we kept meditating because this lady is talking to me that I don't understand. I still think maybe I'm off a little bit. And then there became a day where I'm meditating, and there had been a day where I saw this big gold dome. And Carla said, "Well, maybe it's in Boston." And I'm like, "Maybe, I don't know." And then there became a day where I was meditating, and I had this the most clear memory of my life when I was 3 years old in this life.
Wow.
It was an incredible memory. And I remembered because we lived in Nebraska. My dad had been in the Korean War, was going back to graduate school under the GI Bill. And we got in this blue sedan that was the first brand new car they had. And we drove all the way across the country. And he kept telling me we were going to Boston. And I remembered the day that I was standing on the front seat, things that 3-year-olds don't usually remember.
Exactly.
And got to Boston. I remembered the married student brick housing. I remembered the most incredible memory came through of going to the beach in Boston. And I remembered going to the beach. I was so excited because I had never seen an ocean because I was in.
Oh, that's right. You're in Nebraska.
And I'm walking down this souvenir shop, and then we cross the street, go past this brick wall, and then we're at the beach. And I'm looking over to the side, and I could see an amusement park where the Ferris wheel's going and little feet hanging down. And I could see a roller coaster in the background. And I remembered I started just running on the beach and screaming at the top of my lungs because it was so exciting.
Right. Yeah. This is a child. Yeah.
And as I'm running, suddenly this voice screams out, "Be quiet. You're bothering my family."
All right.
And I looked over, and this little girl ran over, and she pushed me down, sat on my chest, gave me a kiss on the forehead. She jumped up, stood with her hands on her hips, in this little 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. And in the background, I heard the woman who I met a few years when I was meditating say, "Carla, that's not how little girls act."
Oh.
And I said, "Dave, I remember that day. I didn't need to meditate. We were not well off. I was the youngest of 6 girls, good Catholic family. My parents were always splitting up.
Wait, you were the little girl?
I was the little girl.
Oh my God.
I was from
incredible.
Boston. My sister and I, all of my sisters and I were at the beach that day. My parents had gotten back together. We didn't have our own car. Daddy rented 2 cabs, and we went to Revere Beach. So as Dave told this story, we knew it was Revere Beach because Revere had an amusement park with it. And I remember the day because when we arrived, for whatever reason, normally I inherited a bathing suit from one of my sisters, but I didn't have one. And all of my sisters had a bathing suit. My parents couldn't afford it, but we went across the street to one of the little souvenir shops, and I got my first brand new 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. It was etched in my mind. So when Dave said this, we thought, wow, how could he know that?
And we didn't meet again for 35 years.
That's incredible. Wow. I mean, what are the odds that you guys would ever cross paths again?
There's no such thing as coincidence, is what Isabella tells us.
And
Let me ask you,
sure,
Carla, when he described that, did you recall it, or did you look at him and go,
Oh,
huh? What are you talking about?
oh, no. I remembered it. I didn't have to be
Okay.
meditating to remember that. I
Okay.
remembered that day because I didn't have new clothes. And my
Okay.
parents were always split up. So that particular day that we,
Okay.
went there, we got there in the cab, and I remember going across the street, and I remember my sister just next to me in age, she was whining because I was getting a new bathing suit, and my older sister was complaining because she was there without her friends, and, it was a typical family. So,
Right.
all of those things you remember etched in I could draw that bathing suit for you today, color and all. It's that etched in my mind.
And you know why I find this fascinating? Because I've been a hypnotherapist. I don't do hypnotherapy, but I've done a lot of past life regression and age regression.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as far as the power of the subconscious mind, how we do store things in there. But it's really weird because you recall it sometimes at appropriate times.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. And so,
yeah, that's so interesting. God, I can't. So when you guys are doing this, what would you continue to do? You just continue to meditate every morning?
We continue to meditate every morning
and night.
And again, Isabella came through, and then we had a morning as I was meditating.
Okay.
And I looked up as I'm meditating.
This was supposed to be off. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So you were doing.
Yeah, I was meditating one morning again, and as I looked up, I realized I was suddenly looking across a dark alley. And as I looked across the alley, I could see this woman standing there, and I knew it was Carla. Now, when I say I knew it was Carla, it looked like Carla. She still had the same steel blue eyes. She was a 21-year-old of some kind, or some, very relatively young woman.
Okay.
Her hair was slicked back. She had this little gold band on her head, fringed skirt. And I'm looking at her, and she looks horrified. Suddenly, there's two large flashes. A gun sound bang goes off, and I realize I'm shot. And I'm suddenly thrown back, and I know I'm shot, and I'm dying in a dark alley somewhere.
Okay.
The next day, while I'm meditating, the most interesting thing happens. It's before that day, and I'm on the way to a wedding.
So you're going back to that lifetime?
Yes.
Okay.
While meditating, I go back, and I'm heading to a wedding.
Okay.
And as I'm going to the wedding, I'm in this old-looking small car, and we pull up in Chicago, Illinois, in front of Ashland Auditorium.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you this, I had never been to Ashland Auditorium before this.
Okay.
But I pull up in front of Ashland Auditorium, and I run up the steps, and there's a makeshift church inside there. It's packed with people. And I'm led down one side, and I know I'm going to the wedding of a man named Angelo.
Okay.
And as I'm sitting at the wedding singer comes out, and it's the same woman who was standing in the alley. And she sings for the wedding.
Okay.
And at the reception, I go and meet her.
All right.
I have to meet her because she sang so beautifully. I was somehow drawn to her completely. I had to keep pestering her at the wedding. She finally agreed to dance with me. She kept pushing me away, pushing me off. I kept asking her to go to breakfast the next day. She finally agreed to go to have breakfast at Marino's in Chicago the next day, which was January 10th.
Would have been January 11th.
1925.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The memory continues. I'm sitting in Marino's little restaurant having breakfast with her the next morning.
Okay.
And we walk along the Chicago coastline, and it's freezing. It's cold. We're bundled up. She doesn't come to the breakfast very fancy. She just has this wool coat. She keeps pulling it up. She hangs on because it's cold. We walk up and down the Chicago coastline, and she tells me her name is Ruby Donaldson, born in Bullock, Georgia.
Okay.
To James and Anna Donaldson, and that she moved to Chicago to become a singer and a dressmaker.
Okay. Wow.
I have way too many things that I'm trying to tell Carla afterwards.
Are we talking here what, Prohibition era? 1920s?
Yes. 1925. So that wasn't that long ago. When he gave me the information, of course, I wrote everything down. And then I wasn't working the next day, so I got onto Ancestry.com. And I did indeed find Ruby Donaldson, born in 1904, to James and Anna Donaldson from Bullock, Georgia, one of 11 children. Then I got onto some newspaper sites, and I found the wedding of Angelo Jenna to Lucille Spinola, January the 10th, 1925, at Ashland Auditorium. So I called Dave and I said, I have corroborating information. You're not crazy.
Right. Exactly. This is not something you're just making up because
No.
That is what. So how did you take that, Dave? Were you like,
well, I was overwhelmed, excited. I kept getting more of this Ruby JJ memory. And one day I came in and I said, Carla, sit down. And I started to tell her the rest of the story.
Okay.
And as I'm telling her the story, it feels as if I'm JJ talking directly to Ruby. Okay. It's so real. And Carla started to answer the questions the same way Ruby did.
It was wild. It was like something took over us.
We were literally having the same memory at the same time in the same room discussing it.
Mm-hmm. You know why I'm asking you this? Because you're telling me the first thing you saw was you being killed.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And when Carla comes and tells you this person really existed, basically she's verified. Mm-hmm. Did you start thinking I was killed? Like, because that's pretty horrific right there.
Correct.
So when you guys had this moment, you're like, okay. And then you're realizing Carla is also
Ruby.
Okay.
And she remembered Ruby and had some of the same emotions. In fact, we were embarrassed because that couple was very romantically involved.
And we were not. We were married to other people.
Right, exactly. It's like, okay, awkward, but yeah, exactly.
Very, very awkward.
Yes.
But we continued to meditate, and we have journals and journals full of everything, and include, most of our 29 past lives. We have such details. We know our names, our children, who our children are in this life. We know our astrological signs, what we died from, the age we were. So when we started to accumulate all this information, and Isabella started to teach us things that went along with past lives. And she said, past lives are interesting and they're fun, but they're for a reason. They're not just for entertainment. She said, if you live a life following the 5 simple rules, you can get off that karmic wheel. And of course we said, well, what are the 5 simple rules? And she said, everybody knows what the 10 commandments are, but we'll break it down and make it simpler for you. Okay. If you live a life without conceit, jealousy, selfishness, and unforgiveness, and you make all choices and all decisions out of love and compassion, you will complete your karmic wheel. You won't be coming back. So obviously, Dave and I were slow learners because we've been coming
I was going to say, that's a human condition. Everything on that is like, oh boy, okay.
Over 6,000 years.
Very simple, except if you're human.
Yes, but with everything that we wrote down, that's why we decided to write the first book. It's about what happened, and it includes 20 of our past lives. And the lives are fun, but at the end of each life, we write what we did, why we came back yet again.
What was
the lesson?
Let me ask you something, Dave. What happened to you in that life?
We can't tell you.
Well,
that's like the cliffhanger.
A little part of this.
All right.
Of course.
We got shot.
I got shot and I died.
Right.
Because Ruby had started to work for Angelo Jenna, who was the mobster before Al Capone.
Okay.
At a speakeasy called DeAndre's
in Little Italy.
And so when JJ started to show interest and showed up at DeAndre's.
I was going to say, I know usually it's love, money.
Yes. So
sex.
But that love, jealousy. Yeah.
And so when I showed up there, of course, the head mobster believed he really owned all of the ladies that worked in the speakeasy. And they were an asset to make money. And so outside of that, I was a threat.
Right.
And so I got killed.
So in book 1, which is The Gift of Past Lives, we tell the complete story of Ruby and JJ, star-crossed lovers. You know, it has its high points and its low points, but bottom line, you know, karma follows us, and we don't want to think about it as punishment. We want to think of it as potential to get things right. So I worked for Angelo Jenna against my will in that life, but in this life, I married him the first time.
She got even, huh?
Well, I walked away. This time I was able, and I did walk away.
So in other words, you broke the pattern.
I broke it. Yes.
Let me ask you, did you had Jenna done this to you before in prior lives?
Yeah. I mean, yes, we have a long history. And then my second husband, we have a long history. And, you know, of course, if I would have known all of this before, this is why Isabella says that you shouldn't tell people's future if you see it, because it interferes with their path. Because had I not married Angelo Jenna in this life as my first husband, maybe we would never have, you know, completed our karma and been okay, because now we're fine. And had I not married my second husband, we would not have completed the karma, and, you know, we might have
whatever
together again. Yes.
Because if you don't fix that problem, and I don't even like to call it a problem, but if you don't fix that, you don't get over it. You don't learn the lesson. You don't either not allow somebody to control you.
Possessiveness, jealousy, whatever the case might be.
And so, and if you start to follow through with this, then you start to realize that we return in groups that we call soul families, soul groups. And you really have people in your life for two purposes. Your soul family, if you want to call it that, is really those who help you. But you also have, or you know, karmic mates, which are really here to test you.
Right. Exactly.
And there's a goal involved in someday you hope that everyone in your life is now a part of your soul a family mate. If nobody in your life is anything but positive and helping you, then you don't have to keep coming back with those same people trying to break this.
Let me ask you, what happens? Do you develop new karma? Okay, like you said, let's say you've got this pattern with prior individuals in different relationships that, like you said, you might not meet them, or you just don't get, you don't have that chance to work it out. And in other words, not follow that same pattern. But do you ever come across a new player in a lifetime that might set you on a new karma thing?
Absolutely.
Let's say like Carla, you said, I married my first, first husband, and we put that to rest.
Yes.
In these lifetimes, could you, let's say, for example, in this lifetime, have a new player come into your experience?
Well, the players are coming in all the time, because our soul family is big. It's not just 10 people. You interact all of the time. It's funny because Dave and I take a yoga class 3 days a week. And my gift is that through the eyes, I can see somebody if they've been through, in another life with me. So of course, our yoga instructor, because we all come back together to help each other or to test each other. I felt it right away with her. I knew that there was something to it. And of course, Ruby did meet her. And she was positive in that life, but in this life, we're helping her in another way. So they may be there briefly. They're not necessarily new, but it could be just an in and out to see how you react.
So let's use the example of what you said, that, this time, let's say your first husband, you guys worked it out.
Yeah.
Does that mean that, say, if you guys have another lifetime, that's it, you guys, that you're not drawn to each other to work it out because it's been worked out?
Right. And unless we would end up back together to help each other at this point.
Okay.
Since we have broken the karma.
Right.
So that does happen. And sometimes a family mate can come back with you and you end up creating karma with them. Our next door neighbor who recently moved has been in 21 of our lives karmically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this life, we tried very hard with him. And he came back to visit once after he moved, and we brought him soup and we tried to be real nice and friendly, because we want that severed. We don't want to continue.
I was going to say,
you don't want to come back
this
again.
Neighbor relationship sounds like it's a little bit
yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in other words, it doesn't have to be an intense, like, marriage, love relationship. It could be just a neighbor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Marlene, even think of it this way. When you go into a grocery store and the clerk's not having a good day and the clerk gets mad at you, and then you snap back at the clerk, be careful. You might be setting up your next problem.
Oh my God. That puts a whole different spin on it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yes, but if you pause before you react, before you send the text, before your mouth opens, and you just say, oh, am I doing this out of selfishness, conceit, jealousy, impatience, whatever the case? Because all of our little idiosyncrasies fall under one of those categories.
Sure.
They all do. And if you just stop and say, first of all, we have all been kings, queens. We've all been rich, poor. We've all been black, white. We've been slaves and slave owners. We've been saints and sinners. We take turns. So there's really no reason to have jealousy. We've all taken our turn.
You know what? I think it's just, unfortunately, also it has to do, even though you're talking about something that at a soul level, sometimes at our conscious level, we react either sometimes even with what media hits us, or what's going on in our lives. Another, how like you said, like when you do or say something that better.
Yes.
But it gets away from you.
Well, and isn't that what it's all about? It's not what happens to us in life. It's how we choose to respond.
Sure. Exactly. Or that you have recognition of it, and by this I'm talking about people that are psychopaths that have no conscience or remorse, that doesn't bother them one way or the other. And of course, in every story there's got to be a villain. So in the sense of historically the world that we live in,
well, that villain,
sometimes you could have one person commit one act
yes,
that totally affects your life. In other words, it doesn't have to be somebody that's normally in your orbit. It could just be a chance meeting.
Perhaps like Jeffrey Dahmer, perhaps some of the victims of his,
right?
He was, they were his victim in this life, and perhaps in another life it was the opposite way.
And it makes you want to wonder, like, man, if you could do a past life regression, what was the history on those relationships?
Well, we do ask Isabella sometimes, and sometimes she'll tell us, and sometimes she'll say, will this affect your soul? And if it somehow is going to affect us to the good, she may answer it. And sometimes she'll say, you're just being nosy. It's none of your business.
It's like,
So you just have to assume. My sister and I have this joke, when you're going down the road and somebody is right in front of you and they won't hurry up, or they're behind you and they're riding your tail. So my sister and I always say, oh, they must be on the way to the hospital. That way,
all right,
we calm down.
Yeah, we don't have to be mad at them anymore.
Yes.
Right. No, yeah. And of course you always run into those drivers when you're in a hurry. It doesn't fail.
Yes. But that's for a reason. It's to help you. I only had one ticket my entire life. I was on the way to the dentist. I got stopped. And afterwards I said, Oh, Dave, tell Isabella, my perfect record is broken. And she said, well, that's okay. We did you a favor because at the next stop sign, you would have been killed.
Okay.
Say so. Trust the process.
And there we talk about, right, that there's the intuition part also.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people sometimes their intuition, they poo-poo it because they're like, there's nothing concrete. And they go with that, oh, my imagination's running away with me, especially when they have that feeling that they really can't, like I say, it makes you wonder, you know, planes that crash, how many people got on there?
Yes.
That had some type of premonition of not, but they were like, I'm not going to pay attention to this. Of course, if they're deceased, there's no, they can't come back and say, hey, you know what? I had a dream. I had a feeling, whatever, because they're not around to say it. You know, every once in a while you hear a story about somebody that didn't get on a plane. That's rare. And they'll say, hey, I had a feeling. The next thing you know, it goes down. I'm using that as an example, but the same thing of what you said, you know, you go down, or people that normally go to their jobs a certain route, and then they decide on that one day, I'm not going, or I'm going to take a different route, or in your case, that you got stopped. And it's like,
yes.
So we've had lots of interesting experiences like that. And some of them are because like we know so many lives in a row that we went back and looked at some of the patterns. And you start to realize, again, like Carla said, we've been saints and sinners and slave owners and slave masters, or slaves and slave owners. We actually have a series of life that I think is real interesting because we're Viking landing on Scottish soil. In the next life, we're Scottish fighting the English. In the next life, we're English fighting the Scottish. And in the next life, Carla actually is a Viking descent and marries into the English throne. So you look at that and you start to realize at times we were even fighting on the opposite side of the same war.
That's interesting, isn't it?
And then
that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's your perspective on things.
Yes, it's your perspective. So you thought you were absolutely right in that life.
Exactly.
The next life you're on the other side and you think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
How else do you learn compassion?
Sure.
If you've been a slave owner and a slave, you understand some way both perspectives. And then there's the physician in me, so I'll have to throw this in. I did as much research as I could on past life regression, on hypnosis, on memory, on meditation. And there were some very strong things that came out. The first ones were the time between wake and sleep, which is another time people have experience.
Yeah.
During hypnosis, during meditation, you actually have a period of time where you have increase in alpha and theta waves in the brain.
Yes. Yes.
And that is the marker of memory. So people will be under hypnosis and they actually have increased alpha and theta waves. And that's when they have to past life memories. I think that at least speaks to something. And then you start to look at consciousness and subconsciousness, and you realize that there's a bunch of modular theories in the brain. And I was reading through all these modular theories, and I realized that each and every experience that you have, you literally give it a numeric value that's negative or positive.
Right.
And it's how you start to make decisions. You start to add up your past experiences as negative and positive. And if it ends up a little negative, you try to avoid it. If it ends up a little positive, you try to do it.
Yeah.
But you save all those things in your subconscious. And if you save them in your subconscious in your last life, you're really saving something important that should influence you from your past, even if you don't remember it.
If you don't consciously remember it. Exactly.
Even if you don't consciously remember it, it can still influence your next decision.
Absolutely.
It's kind of that way, like, when you touch something and it's hot and it burns you, the next time something is hot, you pull back faster.
Yes. Of course, you anticipate
the burn. And the burn. So I don't walk around in dark alleys looking for flappers anymore because I'll be shot.
It's like, man, the last time I got shot.
Yeah.
It's like, for my troubles, thanks. No.
Right. So those are kind of those things that start to work, that you start to see that there could be some purpose for this.
Exactly. And sometimes the reaction is what you're saying is if it's on a subconscious level, you might react a certain way and not understand why, but on a subconscious level, you might be recalling some type of experience from a prior lifetime.
Yes.
Correct.
And we'll talk. And I imagine also this will work into, how people are phobic about certain things.
Yes.
Correct.
That they don't understand why. I can't see why. I've never had a bad experience with either this circumstance, but I'm phobic about it. And sometimes that's part of let me ask you, do you, in your books, and I mean, I have my own, personal experiences with this as far as when I was working with clients, that sometimes once you realize where the source from, it takes it away. It's almost like
correct.
It alleviates it.
It's one of these things that if you acknowledge the memory, yes, it fixes it. It's one of those things, people start to say, well, how horrible it is that you were shot or this terrible experience happened to you. This is another actual scientific fact. Whatever you do overcome makes you stronger.
Sure.
And adversity is actually something we should face because it makes
of course. I mean, there's no way unless it's just no way. When you had that experience that you were shot, did you go beyond the moment of death, or did it stop there?
We've done it many times.
Yes,
you've gone beyond the moment of death as far as what happens to you. Okay.
Yes, it's amazing, and I do have some intermission memories that we can talk about if you want to.
Okay, I think that's fascinating because people think that sometimes when you do these past life regressions, it's just the thing, but there's more beyond that moment of the death of the physical body, right? Like as far as understanding.
Marlene, I have a girlfriend in this life that before we knew where she fit into some of our past lives, she told me that she kept having a dream about red carpeted staircase with dark wood. And she said, I don't know what it is. I keep having it over and over and over again. Well, of course, most of the people in our life and the people we run into, podcast hosts, etc., they're family. So we've been with them. And in Dave's and my very past life, we were brother and sister. Our name was Katie and Johnny. We again lived in Chicago. It was Christmas Eve, 1943. We were playing on our staircase, a 3-story staircase in our house that had red carpeting. And we were just playing like I was 6 years old and my name was Katie, and Johnny, which was Dave, was 4 years old. Our mother was downstairs wrapping Christmas presents, and we fell to our deaths. We broke our necks.
Oh my God.
So when my girlfriend started to have these memories, I gave her books to read, and she read the books. And afterwards, I said, the reason you're having this recurring dream is because you were Katie and Johnny's housekeeper and nanny. And she didn't know that we died. What happened was we died. They took us away, and it was the Christmas holiday. So she came back a couple days later with our presents, and our mother said they died. So this dream, our spirit guides are only going to let us see something that will affect us and help us. And, that's happened with other people. The regressions we do are on our friends and family. We don't do it for a living, but, we had some great experiences with Dr. Weiss and his wife at the Omega doing that from people all over the world.
Yeah. Omega Dr. Weiss is a wonderful man, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The Omega training week with him, one of the most amazing weeks. It is really profound to have 150 people in the same room having the same experiences, or have had experiences before they got there that they're all sharing. Because
we're in, small town USA, and people don't talk about this thing.
Yeah.
Well, see, this is the thing. I remember when I read Many Lives, Many Masters back in the 80s.
Yes.
Okay. He was, in the introduction to his book, he was purely scientific. There was no room in there for anything having to do with past life regression. Forget it. And if I remember correctly, he let this run. I believe the name of the patient was Catherine, right? I think so.
Yes.
But he let it run because she's thinking she's working this out. This is her imagination. So I'm just going to let her go with it. Until he starts realizing, but he was so not expecting to go where it took him. In other words,
and didn't expect to be there with them in other lives.
No, how can I say it? Because sometimes people, when they go looking for things, they find it.
Yes.
But for him, when you listen to him, I'm thinking if anybody would have talked to him about past life regression, he would have said, no, that's not okay. Well, that's maybe the person's mind, and he's trying to help this woman
problem, whatever.
Yeah. And I heard him lecture many years ago back in South Florida, down during the 1980s. And it was, let's put it this way, it was so full that they had people standing outside with the speakers because so many people came to listen to him. Because at that time, when that book came out, coming from somebody like him that was so tethered into science, that it carried a lot of weight.
And his colleagues started to believe him.
Right. No, it was like, and I think at the beginning, he took a little bit of heat for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, well, Dave, you're a physician. I'm sure that, in the medical field, it's like, okay.
That none of this discussion happens at the hospital because they don't believe that they would. Yes, it would still be too crazy.
Or if they had an experience, they'll never admit to it, right? They'll be like,
correct.
Well, it's funny that you said that because I had a neighbor in her 80s, and she moved away a couple of years ago. And, I knew she went to church and, I thought she was very, straight-laced and everything. And I don't know what made me do it, but she moved out to Arizona and I sent her the first book. And she called me and she told me, she said, that book was so wonderful. And Carla, I have to tell you, I've been speaking with my spirit guide my whole life, but I never told anybody because I thought they would think I was crazy. Now, she was like 85 or 87 when she told me this.
Right.
Wow.
So it happens. People are afraid to bring it up.
Absolutely. They're like, let's keep this because they're going to send the guys in white for me.
Yes.
Because, even when you were religious, the only ones that got away with that, were the saints when they had visions. But that's about it. Otherwise, either you were crazy or you were in league with the devil. Take your pick. Those were your choices.
Exactly. So if the saints that are recognized could have visions and be contacted by the spiritual world, why couldn't little old Dave here have the same experience?
Sure.
Of course he can.
Exactly.
We all
Absolutely.
can.
So let me ask you something. Is Isabella a guide or is she an angel?
She's a spirit guide. We all have.
She's a spirit guide.
We all have a spirit guide that is with us from the beginning. Then we have other guides that help us. For instance, my mother is our gatekeeper and she keeps negativity away from us. My sister is the person in our soul family that crosses us over.
Okay.
So the spirit guide was never human, never had a life. And we all have angels, and our angels directly correspond with our astrological sign and our karma.
Okay.
In our third book, the manual, there's actually a color chart that shows, for instance, Dave is a Pisces and I'm an Aquarian.
Okay.
And we both fall under the yellow angel of Mariel. And Mariel is the angel of selfishness. And when I found that out, because of course everybody beats themselves up, I'm not selfish. Well, that's exactly what we said. But God gives you that angel because you had selfishness in your past life. Ruby and JJ didn't think about anybody else except getting together, and ultimately people were killed because of them. It was selfish. So in this life, God gave us the angel of selfishness so that we wouldn't do the same thing over again.
That way there'll be that little voice in your head saying, don't do that. That's selfish. So you don't have an angel. You might want to call your spirit guide. Some people might throw that into the guardian angel chunk, but they're actually separate.
Mm-hmm. Some people have many angels.
Right. I've heard that sometimes you have that guardian angel who's been with you from the beginning, and then depending on certain circumstances, you might have other angels intercede or help you, depending if you're like in a whatever, if you call on them, I guess, if for lack of a better word.
They're there all the time. You just have to listen in your left ear.
Okay. Now I'm gonna let's go. What does, and I'm sure you've seen lately all these things that are going on with either ancient aliens, extraterrestrials, whatever. How does this figure in all of this?
All right. So, Marlene, this is in no way meant to debunk anything that anybody else they're experiencing. So I'm just going to go through this.
Because we've asked Isabella everything, every question you can think of, we have asked and written it down.
And so, so what Isabella would say is, we're all aliens. That's the first thing she's said.
Okay.
None of us really were created here.
Okay.
So we all existed somewhere else before. So we're all aliens. So this place will always feel strange to you until you return home to God, Creator, Tao, Source, whatever.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Right. She says, want you to think of all the experiences that people report. The people that report ghosts certainly feel someone who's passed over.
Okay.
People that think they've been abducted are experiencing a communication that you would call really psychological, because usually there is no such thing as any physical evidence after the abduction. It's all a spiritual abduction, if you want to call it, or a connection to something in the supernatural realm. Something outside of the universe, not outside of our solar space.
Right.
So we're experiencing a communication with something else. And people will say, I woke up and I saw nothing but bright lights, and the head of the alien looks like they had no eyes, but yet light was shining through and out of the eyes, and it burned through me almost to the point, and I had no control, and I felt frozen there, and I couldn't move, but there was bright lights, and then I saw crystals everywhere.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you that when I have an intermission memory, I return to a space that was my home before, which is what Isabella has called a pod.
Okay.
Which is this dodecahedron shaped crystalline. So it's bright, so much different. And because angel colors are so bright, if you're back in your home pod space in between lives, waiting to return, it appears that you are in an incredible crystalline city with nothing but colors and lights all around you.
Okay.
And when we have seen souls that have passed over, we don't take our senses with us. We don't have eyes. If somebody appears to you and they look like us, it's because they're doing that so you will know it's them. It's to make you feel comfortable. But if you have an experience, an alien experience during the night while you're sleeping or whatever the case may be, they are without eyes. And they, just like Casper, the friendly ghost, he looks like he's translucent. That's how they look. They look translucent. They don't have a body and they don't have eyes. I've seen my grandfather during the intermission period, and he didn't have any eyes. The light was shining right through them. So
and I've heard, it's really funny because I've heard a lot of sightings of ghosts where people will say that, they call them eyeless because people expect to see our face recognition,
eyebrows
our eyes.
And noses and stuff.
But why do we have to be afraid? We don't have to be afraid, but we were taught to be afraid because we think it's different than us. It isn't. That's what we are when we're up there. We're just like that. And they didn't come here to suck something from our brains. They're coming to contact us to help us. There's a reason.
Do you think there's more than one, I guess, species, if you want to call it that? Or is
not,
it just
not
you mean
yet.
in this? Yeah, not yet is what Isabella
and
said.
I guess what I'm saying is because you'll have people that will say, the prototypical, the grays, and then there's other people that say, well, I've seen something that looks totally different.
Yeah.
And of course, the explanation is that there's more than one that's around.
Correct. So, Marlene, again, this is another, unfortunately, the science part of being physician has always affected me in this. So, Isabella said there's no one out there yet. And then if you start to look at all of the constants and all of the inside cosmology, inside physics, quantum physics, you realize everything at this point in the universe is such detailed that our alpha constant here, which is a set of numbers divided into that quantum physics has determined, the alpha constant on Earth is different than every other alpha constant in the universe. And it slowly gets smaller in one direction and larger in the other. To such a point that even at 2 or 3 standard deviations away from the Earth, there a creature like us could not live.
Okay.
There are no creatures like us there.
Tell her why.
All right.
It's what made up of.
Because we're carbon-based. And
we're carbon-based. We're earthlings, for lack of a better word. I mean,
yeah, we're earthlings because earthlings can develop on Earth.
Exactly. Yeah.
They can't develop on the Pleiadian star outside of the 4th galaxy to the left of wherever Captain Kirk went.
The other thing is, a lot of people that have near-death experiences say they see bright lights and they may see God or Jesus or their angels, spirit guides, beautiful ladies, whatever the case may be. And, we understand that completely. Some people, few people say, I had a terrible experience. I went to hell. There was fire. It was scary. Okay. This is how Isabella explained it. If you're not in your right consciousness and you have a past life where possibly it was a long time ago when Nero was burning people at the stake, it was fire, it was scary. Why can't you slip back into that memory? Because we slip back into all other memories. And if you believe that that's what's going to happen to you when you die, you are going to conjure up that memory. If you believe that there's Jesus and there's God and there's beautiful angels and you're passed over people, if they're going to be there for you, normally somebody with a near-death experience says that's what happened to them.
Exactly. Right. I know that it's fewer more than most people, but you have those people saying, yeah, it was a really dark or bad experience, that near death.
It's like 95% have a positive near-death experience.
Yes. Yes, they do.
And what's real interesting is, again, during part of our research, and some of this is in our book, Hell No, Reincarnation, we went back and saw the research done by Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia. They've been doing studies on people who have past life memories, but they only do studies on kids that are like 2, 3, 4 years old who say, I was so-and-so, because they know kids can't be coached.
Right.
But they've got about 2,500 kids that they have called verified past life memories.
Yeah. In other words, because that's the thing. Sometimes people don't realize with millions and billions of people that have existed, I imagine it's got to be difficult sometimes to ever verify. Not that they're lying, but it's just not everybody was written up about in a newspaper, and maybe in the last 100 years is then when really good records were kept of births and deaths.
Yes.
Correct.
So
they have kids who will say, I was married to Mabel last time.
Okay.
And I lived in Mayberry RFD, and I did this, and I had a dog, and
the parents take them there.
And the parents know where Mayberry is, and they drive the kid there, who's 3, and the kid calls out to the dog that's running down the street and knows that dog's name is such and such, and they stop at the blue house that he said he lived in, And a lady opens the door, and he goes, Mabel.
Can you imagine? Mabel's like, huh?
Yeah, and sometimes they do it relatively scientifically. They'll have
right. No, I know what you're saying. Like
5 pictures of Mabel, 5 pictures of a house, 5 pictures, of the workplace that this guy supposedly worked in, and then they'll bring it to a 3-year-old and say, "Do you recognize any of these?" And the kids pick out the right one about 87% of the time.
That's such a high percentage.
Which is way above the standard deviations.
Yes. And the other thing that they do is if this child who has past life memory says, I was shot in the past life, and he says, I was so-and-so, and they go back and they find the autopsy report from so-and-so, and they see where that shot was. Let's say it's in his arm. And this little boy has a birthmark in the arm in the exact spot.
Yeah.
So they verify those also.
Some 20% of deaths have a birthmark associated.
Yeah.
Did they does Isabella ever explain why some people reincarnate, let's say fast, let's say like what you just described, where this child basically can go back? It's within the span of years that they can go back to people that they were living with. Why there's some people that do it fast and others it takes longer?
Well,
remember your soul family.
Yeah. So there's a couple things related to all this. So first of all, if you want to kind of think of it as one big matrix up there and you're close to your soul family, and the farther you get away, the less times you interact with those people that you're close to. And this is all turning around and within itself. So there's a time when it reaches, if you want to call it the spiritual birth canal.
Okay.
And if you died and the birth canal comes by quick and you have soul family out there, you're drawn into it. So you'll return to those people you need to go to. If you miss that cycle, you may have an atonement period that lasts 400 years till you suddenly are on the same cycle with all those people again till you return.
You know, it's really funny. The other day I saw a movie I hadn't seen. It was from the 1970s called The Reincarnation of Peter Proud.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a really old movie. I hadn't seen it in years. It was one of those days I was clicking. There was like, oh my God, I haven't seen this. And it's funny because you look at it as one of those movie of the week things, but it kind of follows exactly what you just described, Dave. About people sometimes, I mean, of course, it's, Hollywood dramatics, but it's where people get drawn back into, the theme, of course, was that this person goes back into the lifetime or of the person that they were with before. Like it was a very quick reincarnation.
Correct.
And unfortunately,
last time, Katie and Johnny, we died in 43 and I was reborn in 58.
Okay.
So,
yeah, which is
not long, but way back, I had one atonement when I poisoned Dave and killed him. Yeah,
see, there's a lot of real stories here that doesn't make
Actually, it was Nightshade. So
Nightshade, that's interesting, and it's really funny because Dave is like, you already broke that karmic thing, right? About the poisoning.
But I was in atonement for 980 years that time.
Wow.
But think about it. If you have karma with somebody, and let's say I die at age 10, and the person that I have karma with doesn't die until 80, I have to sit and wait until they die till we can come back together.
Right.
So there can be
I'm going to ask you, because sometimes, did you poison him out of maliciousness or revenge or what?
No, I poisoned him because we were Egyptian. He was a pharaoh. Our son, actually, Dave had the same gift then that he has now. And he was very nice. He didn't want slaves, and he was releasing all the slaves, and our son did not like it. The son said, I'm entitled to have slaves. What are you doing? So the son convinced me that I should kill him. And the son brought me the nightshade and said, take it to him and poison him. And as soon as I did it, I thought, what did I do? But then the son poisoned me also.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
I take it have you broken your karma with this son?
The son in this life was my very first heartbreak boyfriend.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is incredible. But yeah, the relationships switch around
Yes.
as far as,
and that's why you feel really like sometimes you meet somebody and you're really connected.
yeah.
Like your
Mhm.
energy is really good. And sometimes
Thanks.
and sometimes you meet somebody and you think, oh,
No, I've
I
had
don't
that.
like them. I don't want to talk to them.
Right.
And probably because it's karmic. So you just have to get over
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah. And sometimes
Marlene, when you're going through this, sometimes you find memories being shot that, that's a bad memory. There's a life in the Mayan times where we actually do human sacrifice. It's the most horrific memory that I have when I go back and get this. And literally, I could feel the soldiers from our enemies when we would tie them over the altar, and the head priest would rip out their hearts and pour it into the sun god's mouth. It was horrific things to feel people shake and die, and you could feel that during the memory. It was terrible. So when I think about that, I think, how could I have ever been so horrible?
Because we all were. We did things like that. We were barbaric.
Well, this is that example that you gave earlier about the Vikings. You
Yes.
think about it, the lifestyle, the mentality you were brought up to believe just to go a Viking.
Yes.
Okay. This to plunder and pillage and bring back goods. This was a good thing. You were supposed to do this. And if you were a warrior or Viking, the best death was, basically very
war, because you go
gruesome.
to
It was horrible.
or wherever. Yes.
Right. To Valhalla, Summerland, whatever. In other words, and you think, okay, how much of it is the conditioning that we get where you're trained from birth, basically from the cradle, that this is the desirable lifestyle you want to do. All right.
Yes.
So then you start thinking, okay, is it something you understand on a soul level, or the conflict between what your soul knows versus what you've been taught to believe is honorable and good? So it's one of those things, like, that's why I asked you, when you poisoned them, was it out of revenge, maliciousness? I'm a big believer, as far as motivation, what motivates you? Self-defense. Sometimes people do things because they have no choice. That falls that of that 5, you're like in big trouble, but it's like, because of course I'm a big believer in the laws of self-preservation, which is there might come a moment.
Believe it or not, Marlene, Isabella's had discussions on that. In fact, all of us started at that point because we all start as infants again. You must have some self-preservation to be able to survive. You must need a parent. You must, all those things have to happen in your development, or you won't survive. And so, as primitive man, we didn't think at all about anything but survival
and food.
But we've been able to evolve as a man to the point where once you get past childhood, you actually can make a decision now to give something up.
Yes.
Isabella says it's curious that the first time God is really mentioned is in the Old Testament when he makes a covenant, because about 6,000 years ago, the idea of sacrifice today for tomorrow entered as part of language.
Well, I imagine before, it was the survival was a day-to-day thing. It was.
Yes, it was. There was never a tomorrow. It was only if you could
it was not guaranteed.
10 minutes. You kept searching for food, sleeping, searching for food. Until
Did you ever have it? Did you ever come across it, or has Isabella ever asked you? And I know people have said where children, let's say miscarriages or a child that's lost, will reincarnate back into the same family.
Absolutely. Well, funny you should ask that. My mother had 6 girls, but before she had completed the first pregnancy, for 5 years, my parents tried to get pregnant. She had 2 miscarriages. They were both Dave. And Dave's mother had 2 miscarriages before Dave.
Both girls.
And they were me.
Wow.
And in both cases, a lot of times the miscarriages happen because in my mother's case, my mother and his mother had to be sure that they were having children for the right reasons, not because everybody else was, and it was the thing to do. So it was never the intention for me to come to his mother or he to come to my mother. We were just the vessel. She was the vessel for us to learn the lesson.
Or you had, I guess, to provide that experience for that person at that time. Whatever they had to learn, whatever. Because then you think about it, what about the people, children that die quickly? What was the purpose? But maybe they're an instrument.
Somebody else had a lesson.
Yes.
Not
right, exactly.
Child.
And so, Marlene, when you look at those things, we all start to say how horrible this was. However, somebody got a lesson. And the other thing is, when you start to look at this, you realize that your soul or consciousness is something eternal.
Right.
And a life is nothing more than a blip in time. Mm-hmm. It's nothing compared to forever.
Oh, of course, but we're so caught up
in our own lives and our own moments.
Yes.
In this life that we don't even think about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely. Like I said, when you were a kid, somebody told you a year, you'd be like, a year? That's forever. Like Christmas, that's next year. Like, and now,
now you get up and it's time to go to bed. It flies.
And of course, it's like everything happens to, I think it hinges on two things. Do you live in a hostile universe or do you live in a friendly universe? How you see things and how you feel about it.
Yes.
And basically, I'm not going to say self-preservation, but your desire to live this life. Eventually, I imagine you will come to the point, where, let's say, of course, if not due to an accident or something like that, that you're, let's say I'm talking old age, that you're like, okay, I'm done now. I'm ready to go. But yeah, it's how attached you are. But in the meantime, it's like what you described. Even though, that thing about, I'm going to use that very new agey trope. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we seem to forget that a lot, I think.
It's not what happens to us, it's how we choose to respond.
Of course. This has been so interesting. And by the way, I'm going to let you know, which is one of the things a lot of people don't realize, that high states of anxiety will put you into a hypnotic state. Okay. That's why you will get people that, let's say they've had a hard time at work. I'm not going to say this all the time. There's different suggestibility. Different people will go into hypnosis easier, different, whatever. There's a lot of things. But anxiety, and I'm sure, I don't know, have you ever had the experience where you've driven home or gone somewhere and you don't remember the trip?
Sure.
All the time.
That's
especially if you're doing something like driving, which you're used to doing it basically on autopilot, for lack of a better word.
I've eaten like 6 cookies while I was on the phone. I didn't even remember it.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Marlene. And we haven't even touched anything on religion. So if you have any part of that you want to discuss, we can talk about that too.
She's thinking.
She's thinking. Oh, she just went off.
What happened?
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, don't know what happened.
Here we go. All right, who knows? There's 2 of me. There's 2 streams. That's wonderful. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that. I'll just go back and edit it. But anyway, yeah. I don't know if you heard that last part that I asked you, about people that you drive somewhere and you're there before you know it, and you just don't remember that trip.
Yes.
Yes.
Sometimes it's that
people tell me all the time, I can't be hypnotized. And I say, do you remember driving to work yesterday? Well, no, not really. Yeah. That's because you were hypnotized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
People
ones
don't
that
realize there's the different levels of hypnosis.
the ones that say they cannot be hypnotized are the ones that are the easiest, it seems like.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say about the only type of person that I would never try to hypnotize is somebody that has some serious mental illness like psychosis or schizophrenia. That's like you don't want to go there because that could get really ugly. Or they,
a young
if they're taking
child.
medications. Pardon me?
Yes. Or a young child.
Right.
Someone under 18.
I've worked with young children. But you can't put them under too long. But they'll go. They're I've done it, but you have to be real careful with that as far as the age and the length of time. You can't do it like an adult. But yeah, it's incredible that sometimes people don't realize that when they get all anxious, and the reason why I say, and also certain beats of music. Like I tell everybody, can you imagine going to a big blockbuster movie, but there would be no music? And I go, the experience wouldn't be the same because a lot of those beats that they've put in these beautiful pieces that they put, like John Williams' Jaws.
Yes, yes.
They will put you into, how you you're into that movie.
It's very suggestive. Yes.
It focuses your attention away from reality.
Yes. Well, that's why we meditate with music also, or chant, or chimes, or things that take you away from, gee, did I flip the laundry over?
And that's what's really funny. I think that everybody that's meditating the first time you can't. It's very difficult not to go through the to-do list in your head.
It is.
It's like, and when I get there, and did I do? And after that, I gotta go to the. And after a while, it's like you want to get up and go do it because that's what we've become, a population of multitaskers.
Mm-hmm.
And God sitting there and not doing anything is like. I could be doing this and this and this and this and this.
It's so nice not to.
Is it? Yeah. Let me tell you something. That's why, how they say all these, the hermits and aesthetics that were on the mountain, and things like that. It's like, because they got away from everybody going, hey, do that for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. What can I? It has been absolutely wonderful to speak to both of you. Let me ask you: you have the 4 books. Are you working on a new one?
Yes, we are, but we have 2 puppies. And what were we thinking?
Yes.
What kind of puppies do you have?
They are double toy Bernedoodles.
A Bernedoodle. What's the other part of what is that?
It's a Burmese mountain dog and a toy poodle, and then. It was a Burmese mountain dog with a toy poodle, and then they crossed that with another toy poodle.
Aww.
So it looks a little like a teddy bear when it's really young. Now it's a little bit bigger, but it looks like just this. They're the very snuggliest little dogs ever. Very sweet.
But
what do you have? Are they siblings? Are they siblings?
Yeah, they're siblings.
Yes.
I have 8 dogs, so as you could tell, I'm a dog lover. Yeah. I have chickens. I have birds. I'm an animal lover, but I'm into animals. That's why when you said that, I was like,
we have 2 rescue cats, and then we have these 2. We would have rescued a dog. I've always had schnauzers, but we rescued the last schnauzer, but there wasn't really anything available, and we couldn't get a big scary dog with rescue cats. So
you know what? That's I've noticed that unfortunately if and when any of the smaller dogs, medium to smaller dogs, they're gone very quickly.
Yeah.
And you get a lot, and I know there's people that are gonna go out there and go, pit bulls are nice. Don't get mad. But unfortunately, you see a lot of pit bull or pit bull mixes or American. And when you have, because my dogs are on the smaller side, terrier, small side, I can't risk that. I can't risk
me either
rescuing a bigger dog like that with a temper. I wish I could, but
I know
I can't.
It's hard to bring another dog that's 5 years old.
Yes, exactly.
That is 60 pounds around an 8-pound cat.
Yeah.
Nope. You can't.
Because you don't know if they're going to get along.
And what's really funny, I have heard of, not when they're brought up, not when they're together, like especially when you bring in the puppy, but I've heard that the cat and the dog, they'll be getting along, and then one day something happens, and it's it for the cat.
Yes.
Something
Yes. So we didn't want to do that because we love our cats.
Yep.
What do you got? You got 2 cats, you said?
We
How
have
many
2
cats?
rescue cats. One of them is white with black. Her name is Luna. She's a white cat that also has like a cat sitting on her tail, like a cat within a cat.
Yeah, when you look at the back, it looks like she's got a cat sitting on her back.
And the other one is gray, and her tail she was actually picked up by a hawk and dropped, so her tail broke off. But
you know what? That's why I don't have cats, because where I'm at, I have a lot of birds of prey.
Oh,
And I even have bald eagles every once in a while, but I've lost a few chickens already. But yeah, and we even at night, I mean, we've got some big screech owls and stuff that they'll take, But yeah, so I understand what you mean. That's why I haven't gotten any cats, because it's like
we don't let our cats out. We put them out in they have like a tent that's all enclosed. And we have a fun run that's like a tube that's all enclosed. We put them out in those, but they're not the birds cannot get them.
Yeah. We don't let them run.
No.
Right. Well, the cats, I have 2 that are left. I have another house in Miami where my son is at. And those cats, they were rescued in the sense that there was a park where, it was a big park with the trails, and people started dumping their cats there.
Oh, no.
I know. It drives me crazy.
So one I rescued that you could tell it was a kitten. It wasn't feral. It wasn't. So I took that one. There was another one which you could tell. I went and I came back in a little while, and I don't know what happened to Mama. Mama left them. I don't know. I took that one. And another one was they dropped the same thing. They drop them off in the front of the building, an office building. They know there's always somebody like me.
Yes.
So yeah, usually what I would do is I would fix them, and they would be indoor, outdoor cats. But of course, it was a residential area.
Yes.
So I've had cats for usually my rescues are not the rescue it's just rescue because somebody
dumped them and they showed up at your door.
Yeah, or those feral colonies can develop really quick, by the way.
Oh, there's a huge one in Findlay. Yes.
Yes, they can develop and I know what that's like. So over here, it's like I'd be a nervous wreck because I live in a very rural area and I've got a lot of wooded area. And if that cat disappeared, I'd be like, no, I've got like 40 chickens and the dogs and the birds. And it's like, if I put a cat in that mix, Marlene will go,
wow. So someday we'll get back. We actually did write a meditation book that is finished, but we just haven't published it yet. And and we are working on this other one. But the puppies have to be able to lay down and not need all of our attention so that we can get back to it. So
yeah, and they don't chew on stuff. Yeah, believe me, it takes at least about a year or more, depending on their disposition. But because if it's like children, they know when you're not looking. Oh, when you're not paying attention. Yeah, it's like, oh, look, you're not paying attention to you.
Yes,
those nice leather shoes, whatever.
I know. Yes.
And for my podcast listeners, what is the website that they could go to get more information about both of you and your books?
Our website is thegiftofpastlives.com. And there's links to all of our books.
And all the books and everything is there.
Yeah, they can email us if they want. We answer all those emails too.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to speak to both of you. And I want to wish you the best of luck in all your projects.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thanks a lot for having us on.
Oh, on the contrary.
I got one other thing I like to say at the end. Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, try to take care of the planet that we live on, especially if you believe in reincarnation, because the sewage you just dumped into the river is going to be there when you come back in your next life.
I know. I know. Isn't that, because people think, I'm not going to have to worry about that until they realize they do.
There may not be a planet to return to if we don't take care of it.
That's a crazy thought, but yeah, that's something we need to think about. Absolutely.
Very true.
All right. Thank you. Take care and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Marlene.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. I thought that was a great interview. Reincarnation. I know there's people going out there, I don't believe in that. It's just your imagination. And some people believe in it. Don't get me wrong. Some people do believe in it. But I will tell you, because when I was doing hypnosis, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I had people ask me, did I believe in it? Because I had people come and I said, okay, whether I believe in it or not, as far as it being the how can I say it? The reincarnation, in other words, that our soul is reborn into different circumstances until like a school type of thing. I will say that I saw reincarnation or how's this? Hypnosis for past life regression work for people. A lot of people think, well, that it had something, um, like a phobia or something, something really earth shattering, and that the person saw this past life, and all of a sudden, whew, that now I get it. Not really. Sometimes there's doubts. It could be just a doubt that you have in your mind, maybe about a future step or something that I even saw that during past life regression. This person, something clicked in their psyche, in their mind, on their conscious mind, that they recognized what the message was. Because one of the suggestions that you do as a hypnotist is, what is the most appropriate lifetime for this person to witness? Okay, again, depending on the temperament of the person, depending where they're at their head, sometimes people will go back to a certain lifetime that they could digest. How's that? It might be there might be one that's more appropriate, especially if they're going through something in their life, but they're not ready for it. They're not ready for it. In other words, what they will witness will it will put them in such a state that they'll just miss the message. They'll miss the reason why they're seeing that. So sometimes when you say what is the most appropriate, it's the most appropriate at that moment to put this person into understanding how hypnosis works, how the past life regression, how what they witness. God knows, people sometimes think they're going to disappear into the either whatever. Basically depends on the personality. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Or most importantly, to show them something that they didn't expect. How's that? I want to say 99.9% of the people that came to see me for past life regression had an idea in their mind of a past life that they had. Some were more curious than others, and others were like, I know that I lived during this time because I have been. And they were flabbergasted when they would go back to past lives that had nothing, not even on the same continent with that past life. That doesn't mean they didn't have it. That doesn't mean they never lived or had that experience. But maybe for that question of what is the most appropriate at this time for this person to see, that lifetime didn't really matter for what was going on in their lives right now. How's that? It was, no, we're going to take you for you to witness something that is something that you might be aware that you need to address, something that you're experiencing right now in this present life, that is going to help you, or something that's going on under your conscious mind, something that's working out. You might be in denial of it. You might not even realize it. It might be a hidden memory, something traumatic that happened and you buried it and it's there, and you need to experience this lifetime, whatever that was, for something in your head to, like, that you go, I get it now. I understand. That's why when I asked Dave about, when people sometimes have a phobia, which is an unexplained fear of certain things, places, circumstances, whatever. The aha moment, how's that? The understanding, if they see in a past life why Maybe they had this certain experience. That, of course, there's when you put somebody under hypnosis where you put them in an observer mode. Okay, so you don't want to traumatize somebody because on a soul level, you know that what you're seeing, even though you might not look like that person now, that is you. In other words, to put you in an observer mode where you're not going to be traumatized by maybe seeing something really horrific or disturbing to you, whatever, that all of a sudden it will make sense to you. Oh, I understand now why this scares me, or I fear that, or this place, or these people, or whatever the phobia, or whatever's going or knocking around in your head. Getting back to my original question, do I believe in it? I don't know. Part of me wants to say now that it works on people. Some people came to me just out of curiosity. They were curious, or they said, "Oh, I know that, I was Scarlett O'Hara or something like that." My point being, yeah, but sometimes people they're going through things, and others are going through things, they just don't realize it. It's just going underneath. And yeah, I've seen people come out of hypnosis and go, I understand now. And I'm like, what do you understand? Especially when sometimes the lifetime that they go to is really normal. How's that? Regular. No, they were not important people. Sometimes they were not even rich. I mean, normal. When I mean normal, like very mundane existence, living someplace, marriage, children, long life, very, weren't killed horrifically, didn't participate in a war, didn't basically very vanilla, if you want to call it. And you say, there was something in there for you. What was that? Believe it or not, there's something that you recognize on a soul level. That all of a sudden you say, I understand, because there's always, and it's one of those things that only that soul understands or recognizes. And I had people sometimes that some people got it like right away. I bring them out of hypnosis and they're like, and then there was other people that they would be like, well, why did I see that? Or I don't know. Like, oh, like I didn't expect that. Why did I? And it's like, I don't know. Why did you? I'm not going to lead you. I'm not going to suggest any time period, anything. I'm going to let you take you to where we said, what is the most appropriate lifetime for you to see now? Then I would get a call a couple of days, 48 hours, sometimes a week, where people would start having these really wild dreams, like their subconscious is going, and they would call me and they go, I get it. Having these dreams, I don't know if they're memories, or it would just like explode in their head. And I'm not talking about nightmares per se, but a lot of symbology, weird places, things, animals, people that they didn't recognize, places, houses, a lot of stuff. And then somewhere along the line, it would just all of a sudden they would get it. It's like like almost like their mind, their soul finally said, "Oh, thank God, you finally do you get it now?" And it's almost like even when you come out of hypnosis, it's almost like the logical or conscious mind is still resistant to recognizing what that past life was trying to tell you. And sometimes, again, it could be something traumatic, or it could be something as in you were, how's this? I'm going to use something from one of my cases. In that lifetime, you were a very vain person. Okay. You were a very vain person, very self-centered. And I'm not going to say you were, but by the way, this is not necessarily a bad person per se, but somebody that is very vain. And usually that falls along where maybe they put their needs before others, and they weren't, I'm not like this. I'm not talking, this is a person who's a scourge of society is going out there, but sometimes it makes them understand some of their present experiences that they've had, like what Dave and Carla were talking about, as in you're trying to address something from then. All right. And by the way, sometimes this thing with the karma is not that you're put in the, you know how, if you inflicted it, you're going to get in other words, maybe the last time you were the person doing the bad thing, now you're going to be the person on the receiving end. Not necessarily. You can find yourself in the same exact circumstances, and it's like, how do you handle it this time? And I'm sure you've heard of people that sometimes during the majority of their lives, they really did awful things or bad things. And then when they get older, if you want to call it a coming to Jesus moment, they realize, man, I really harmed a lot of people. Or I did all these things thinking it was going to be justified. In the end, it didn't. It made me a bad person. I really felt horrible, even though I tried to maybe push down my conscience. And in the end, I did harm for nothing. Maybe I loved money, or who knows, one of these people like, hey, whatever, Wolf of Wall Street, whatever. You might find yourself all over again in the same circumstances. And it's like, how do you handle it this time? Let's say you were a person that was really hung up on money, like that you were like trample, like walk on people's heads. You might find yourself the same situation, very wealthy, with that ability. It's not, what is the choice that you make this time? Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come back as the poor person. You might just come back exactly. But what are your choices this time? What did your soul learn? So yeah, I mean, it could get really deep and esoteric and all that stuff. So anyway, guys, I really hope that you like this interview with Carla and Dave. I urge you to go to their website, check out their books. I understand that thing about the puppies. And, as you can tell, they seem like two very down-to-earth people. Dave, he was a doctor for many years. Like I said, even when I made that reference to Dr. Weiss, these are people that sometimes their background is not in a, let me see. It's not like the guy, the person that you see at the that sits at the New Age store, that's got the rock crystals and the none of that. Their background is not. This doesn't figure into their. And by this, I'm not saying spirituality. Don't get me wrong, but this portion of spirituality, that's not in there. That's like woo. That's like, all right, okay, yeah, okay, whatever. And then when you see them find themselves in these circumstances, man, sometimes it's a very good source to have. Anyway, guys, I hope you like it. Come back next week. I have a lot of great guests lined up. Lots and lots of great guests lined up. Okay, interesting people, diverse ideas, diverse thoughts, what's new, things like that. Because let me tell you, despite all the changes that we see, sometimes that seem like accelerated, there's a certain constant in the world, in life, that, there's a certain stream that happens no matter what. It's like, it is, So let's come back and we'll explore it. Take care.